Margo Schlanger, Professor of Law at the University of Michigan, Director of the Civil Rights Litigation Clearinghouse. Hello, Margo.
Hello.
Hello, and Erol Morkoc, American political strategist, spokesman for Republicans overseas. Hello, Erol.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, nice to talk to you, Erol. This is highly significant, both given what we know President Trump's aspirations are around executive orders and his personality and his singular determination that he's the decision maker, Margo.
So I think the key thing that happened today is that the Supreme Court said that they were going to allow less authority for lower court, for district courts and courts of appeals, and allow the president to get away with more. So, that's good news for the Trump administration and bad news for the rest of us.
Why is it bad news?
Well, what the court said was that even when an administration policy is illegal, that there are going to be roadblocks and hurdles in the way of an effective order telling the administration to cut it out. It's not going to be impossible. It may turn out to be impossible in the end, but they didn't do that today. But they made it much, much harder for courts to stand up and say, no, you cannot do that. That's illegal. And they did that apart from finding something legal. So even when we're in agreement that some policy of the administration is illegal, they made it harder for courts to stop that policy.
Erol?
Well, I think that what we're having here is just a constitutional correction. I mean, for years, we've watched lower court judges, oftentimes in politically friendly districts, issue nationwide injunctions that halted federal policy far beyond the plaintiffs who brought the case. And that's not how the judicial system was designed to operate. Article 3 of the Constitution gives judges the authority to decide actual cases involving actual parties. They're not really supposed to be imposing nationwide freezes on the executive policies with single ruling. It doesn't take away anybody's rights. People can still sue, judges can still issue injunctions, but the relief must be limited to the plaintiffs involved and not extend to the entire country by default. And I think this is a return to judicial modesty. And when you look at the constitutional balance that has been, at least in our perspective, very much brought down by overreach. You look at the 35 of 40 nationwide injunctions came from just 5 district courts, all in deeply liberal jurisdictions. It's not a fair legal review. It's, forum shopping, and this ruling has reestablished fairness by ensuring that no single judge has veto policy over the national policy before that policy has even had a chance to be legally tested in full. So all we're saying is you need to go through the full legal process. You can't wake up at 2 a.m. in one of these 5 chosen districts and try to dictate national policy. And it has a lot of constitutional scholars.
It's not saying that, is it? It's not saying that's not the threshold here, is it?
In what context? It does very much seem that that's the threshold.
I do not agree. I do not agree. The Supreme Court's ruling today was not limited to emergency orders. It included after final adjudication, and it was not limited to single judges. It includes courts of appeals, and I think that what the court said was it should be hard for courts to enjoin the president, but I don't think that's out of a concern for procedural regularity. I don't think that's what's going on at all. I think what they were doing was saying, we want the only court that can be a check on the Trump administration. We want that to be us. And they've simultaneously demonstrated that they actually aren't interested in playing that role at all. And so what that leaves is the executive branch quite unchecked.
Well, they're checked by the Supreme Court and by the fact that there still is due process. I mean, would you support, for example, a Texas judge shutting down Biden's student loan plan for the entire country? If not, then this isn't legal principle. It's a partisan tactic, and that's what we see from your side.
No, I don't think so. I think I think for one thing, the court left in place certain avenues for national injunctions, including including avenues that had to do with administrative law. And those are the ones that tended to operate against the Biden administration. And so I think the court was fairly careful to say all those orders that involved the Biden administration, they were probably okay. It's only the orders against the Trump administration that are not. So I don't think that I think that the group that's saying that sauce for the goose is not sauce for the gander is the right wing, not the left.
Well, if you were to take off your legal hat for a second, would you at least understand the perception of the Trump voters or the non-political legal sophisticates who see, the president who the majority has elected go out and try to do things and have his agenda be stopped? You can at least maybe concede that it doesn't play well to a democracy.
I think that we are a constitutional republic, and the Constitution's rules are being flouted by the administration, which is trying to, by executive order, do something that is contradicted first by statute and then more foundationally by the Constitution itself. The administration has no real defense of that position, and so they're taking refuge in procedural niceties, and they've won for today. But I think in the end, what we will see is that birthright citizenship is going to stay a part of the constitutional order.
Can I ask you both, before you go tonight, about a separate matter? Because this week we also saw Donald Trump directing pretty choice words at some sections of the media. This followed the leaking of an initial intelligence report suggesting the raids on Iran's nuclear facilities were not as effective as he declared. So Trump didn't hold back in what he thought of the outlets that published the leaks from the Defense Intelligence Agency.
We have scum that's in this group, and not all of you are. You have some great reporters, but you have scum. CNN is scum. MSDNC is scum. The New York Times is scum. They're bad people. They're sick. And what they've done is they're trying to make this unbelievable victory into something less. Now, even they admit that it was hit very hard, okay? But it wasn't hit hard. It was hit brutally. And, I don't want it for me. I want it for the pilots. I want it for the military. They did such a good job. If you were in the Situation Room with me, with the generals and all of the people that did such a good job, and then they get demeaned by these idiots at CNN who can't get ratings, the place is dying, nobody wants to even waste their time going on their shows. So they form with the New York Times, who's dying also. Without Trump, you wouldn't have a New York Times.
And then in another press conference, Donald Trump suggested the line of questioning was unpatriotic.
You, especially you, should be proud of those pilots, and you shouldn't be trying to demean them.
No, there's
those pilots flew at great risk, a big chance that they'd never come back home and see their husbands or their wives. You should be praising those people instead of trying to find some. By getting me, by trying to go and get me, you're hurting those people. They were devastated, Errol,
what do you make of that?
Well, I stand unreservedly with President Trump, and as somebody who works in the defense intelligence sector and who's worked hand in hand with the DIA all through the Caribbean especially, these are consummate professionals. And the fact that there would be quote-unquote anonymous sources who are leaking to the same journalist, by the way, who leaked the fake Hunter Biden news story that it was all nonsense using John Brennan and James Clapper. When you have these anonymous sources who are leaking from the inside, what's to stop the next person saying, oh, well, my anonymous sources actually outrank those anonymous sources? And then what turned out to be was a low confidence report by DIA. And within 24 to 36 hours, we've seen everybody come out from SecDef all the way to the Israelis.
That's a different matter, isn't it? It's a different
because he's upset because of the line.
The intelligence report, but actually targeting journalists and publications, because he doesn't like what they're saying, they are labelled in front of the entire country as scum.
Well, if you consider what they've labelled him in front of the entire country, they've labelled him equally or worse in front of the entire country. Donald Trump has, obviously a bone to pick with the media, but part of a free media is if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Donald Trump is there answering your questions where Joe Biden was hiding behind the auto pen for 365 days or however long.
I really think that labeling the media scum is part and parcel of resisting accountability, which is the hallmark of this administration. And whether the leakers were outranked by other people or not, nobody has asserted that the leakers were lying. The leakers leaked a report that was authentic. And maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't true in the end, but it was an authentic report. And Donald Trump wants all bad news. He labels it fake because it's bad. He doesn't label it fake because it's fake. And his own press releases, his own press conferences have really only the vaguest connection to the truth. Like when he said today that the Supreme Court agreed with him on birthright citizenship, which they did not. So the idea that Donald Trump is calling anybody a liar is crazy. And when he maligns the press, let's just understand that for what it is, which is that he wants there to be nobody who can hold him to account.
Well, that's not
And
true.
yet-
Come on.
And yet he turns up at so many press conferences and takes so many questions from the press that doesn't stack up, does it?
Well, I guess what I think is that, we've been talking about the presidency having a bully pulpit for a pretty long time. I think it's not the same thing when the president calls a private individual or a member of the press scum as when other people criticize him, as I'm doing right now. Nobody cares what I say, but everybody cares what he says.
He's also a sovereign
Really
citizen, though. He can share his opinion.
really
I don't
interesting.
object to him sharing his opinion, but calling the press scum is a hallmark of fascism.
Let's see what we think at home tonight around this. 030 30 80 55 55. Margo and Errol, thank you very much indeed. I've just given you the wrong number. It's 0805 909 693.